Hello, my name is Matthew, and I'm reading Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. And um, as I'm going along, I'm really enjoying it. And I wanted to take a moment and just talk about a single chapter or just a few um, episodes that are really interesting to me and very peculiar. And so this is chapter 11. I just talked about chapters 1 through 10. And chapter 11 has this dramatic tonal shift, which is acknowledged by the narrator. We have a time jump. We've spent all of this time with this very young girl, Jane, 8, 10 years old, at this horrible house, and then at this institution where um, she grew up. Now we jump 8 years. Now she's a young lady, and the perspective, the tone, the writing style, all feels very different, and it works. It works so well. Um, I can imagine the recollections that you would have from your time when you're 8 or 10 would be very different than um, how you would remember your teenage years. Um, Things that happen when you're a child um, can really stick with you and feel much bigger and much longer for your personal experience. And as you get older, things starting to hasten up. The other tonal shift is that it really feels like a gothic story. And so Jane is leaving this institution. She's gotten a job at this Fairfax. I hope it's Fairfax. I think the Fairfax household, and she's going to um, be tutoring a young girl. And so we already have a lot of really interesting things happening. There's a shift in roles. We spent so much time with Jane being mistreated by guardians and then being treated well by guardians. And she knows um, how important that relationship is for the development of a young child. She went through that, and we also spent time with her education. And so she's a curious, intelligent, talented young lady, and it's just great to see these connections. But getting to the house, so there's this big trip, and then she's at this stop off point where she expected some sort of um, uh, greeting or final transport to the house. She doesn't know where she is. She's all alone. She's waiting a while, getting um, more and more concerned, growing very, very worried. And then there's this um, stranger that appears, this man. He has a one horse carriage. He's very gruff and curt with her and just very plainly says, like, are you Jane Eyre? Get in the carriage. It's going to be an hour and a half trip to the house. And that's pretty much all he says. The trip takes much longer than he said that it would. Um, they get there, and the first impression of this household and meeting Mrs. Fairfax and other characters that start coming up, it really gave me the feeling of a haunted house. It really has, like I said, this gothic atmosphere to it. It's a scary place with these unusual, unnerving characters, when Jane meets Mrs. Fairfax, the unnerving element is how friendly and affable she is. She's very welcoming, talkative, and it really throws Jane off guard because she felt that this was going to be this aristocratic, well-to-do woman who, Mrs. Fairfax, who would really play into the different roles that people have in society or in society and treat her a certain way. Instead, she's carrying her along and talking in the bedroom and just being very motherly and kind and friendly. And Jane's kind of looking around the house, almost just suspiciously. Like, there's something off about this house. A few other things happen, and then the young girl that she is going to be tutoring makes her appearance, and it's a French little girl. It's this girl that comes out, and she just starts speaking French, and I was so surprised by that. I really loved it, having these little surprises, things that I couldn't have guessed, and it's a small thing. At least right now, it seems like it's a small thing, and still very jarring. Again, we've spent time with Jane learning French, so it works. She can talk to this little girl, and the little girl has her own nurse who only speaks French, and Mrs. Fairfax is in this house. So glad that Jane speaks French because she can hardly talk to the little girl when she can't talk to the nurse, and it doesn't seem like there's too many other people in the house. So Jane is coming into this very strange household family dynamic. And then Mrs. Fairfax brings up Mr. Rochester, and things start to be revealed. Mrs. Fairfax is not the head of the household or the matriarch of the household. Instead, she's like a house manager. She's there to be taking care of things, but it's not her house. It's not her property. It's this Mr. Rochester, who has yet to make an appearance. And we learn very mysteriously some connection between this young girl who Jane is going to be tutoring and Mr. Rochester. She's described as, the young girl is described as Mr. Rochester's ward. He was on the continent, and it's not, from what I believe, it's not his daughter, it's his ward. So he has acquired this little girl and a nurse. Now, I was thinking about the stranger who was driving the carriage, and sometimes my favorite part of reading is sort of guessing what's going to happen and thinking what parts are important. And I was thinking about the beginning of Dracula by Bram Stoker, and the beginning episode is my favorite part of the book. It's the haunted house horror element where we're in this closed environment and it's all very scary. And in Dracula, the main character is going to Transylvania and going to Dracula Castle, and there's this unnamed strange driver taking him there. We learn later that it actually was Dracula. And I just can't help but think, was that driver that was taking Jane to the house, was that Mr. Rochester? And if it was, that's already very haunting. But just to have those kind of thoughts about how strange and mysterious the characters and the feeling of this house can evoke. It is really haunting, and it feels like a haunted house. Um, and yet it's still so inviting, which sometimes when you're reading a book and things are going very well, it can be it can be a sign of a dramatic shift in events to come. Um, Really enjoying it. I love um, the atmosphere that's being created. I'm really interested in this house. All of these new characters have been introduced in a really great way. They just all feel very peculiar and particular and um, human, in real individuals that are coming into Jane's life, and she's in this whole new world. Everything um, seems strange, and that strangeness is really evocative. So, just some thoughts on chapter 11. I hope I got all the names correct. I don't know. Um, and yeah, so let me know what you think. Please leave a comment if you would like, and take care.